All right, see if that says live. No, it won't let me go. I need Shantae and her technology. Hi, everybody. It's Carrie Campbell with the Dog Gurus. Happy Wednesday. Um, I'm here today with the wonderful Amber Burkhalter, one of our Profit Network coaches, and we're super excited to be here this week on Hump Day. If you wouldn't mind dropping a note in the chat so that you can see us and that all of our technology is broadcasting as it should be, that would be great. So we will have a little bit of a heads up here technology wise. Okay, get that going. And yeah, we're super excited to be here today. For those of you who don't know the Dog Gurus, we provide pet care businesses, education, staff training, and business coaching. We give expert advice with proven strategies and comprehensive resources to help pet care businesses thrive. So, I see people joining us. So if somebody would not mind dropping a note in the chat so we can see that you are hearing us, that would be wonderful. So whether you're running a dog daycare, a boarding facility, a grooming salon, training center, our goal is to support you in delivering the highest care quality and maximize your business's potential. So that's really what we are all about, whether it's our staff training programs or our operational efficiency models, how to increase your customer service and revenue generation. We can cover all aspects of running a successful pet care business. Yay. Thanks, Ben and Chris. It's good to see you. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, but we're super excited to be here. And our topic for the week is dealing with overstimulation in daycare dogs. So that's kind of where we want to put our focus for today. You know me, I love getting into behavior topics. So that's always fun. And I encourage you, if you have questions throughout the live, please drop them in the chat so we can answer them for you directly. And Amber, since you are one of our newer Profit Network coaches, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Burkhalter. I am a returning Profit Networks coach, so I am back again. I founded, owned, and operated a dog training company that we added on services. So we had daycare and boarding and grooming in retail, but training was our flagship service. And all of our daycare and boarding was built around training and built around behavior. So I have a love for this topic as well. As Carrie knows, I love to talk about behavior. I sold my business about 2 years ago in a wonderful M&A that I was very happy with, and I took a sabbatical. So I am back working with the Dog Gurus again. I'm really happy to be on the team and excited for this topic today.
Yay! Well, I mean, what better story right there than to just share how you've had years of expertise and you've done so much in the training world. You've been on the board of APDT and then selling your business successfully, taking that much needed hiatus, because I think we all need that break when we first transition out of our businesses. Lord only knows that being a small business entrepreneur is incredibly stressing at times. So, but also brings a lot of joy. So
it brings a lot of joy. I was glad to just spend some time, mostly with my family is what I spent.
Yep.
So it was really nice to have that time. But yeah, small business ownership isn't for everybody, but it is, I think, one of the best ways to work. I think there's a lot of joy that can come from it, and you can really be impactful in your community, which to me is huge.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about those inappropriate behaviors that can occur with overstimulation. And I was just kind of going back and researching some of my notes that I've done over the years about, what some of the causes can be, and looking at things like environment, things like routine or structure. So what are your thoughts on that as far as how to create a good routine within your daycare facility?
I'm going to talk a little louder. I think people are having trouble hearing me, so hopefully this helps a little bit.
Great.
So it was always really important that we started the dog off in the right mindset. And so every day ran the same way. We started every day the exact same way, if it was a daycare dog or a boarding dog. And so dogs come in, we do potty time, then we do play, then we do breaks, and then we would do enrichments. So that routine went through every day. And dogs that came regularly really thrived on that. They knew what was coming, and they didn't have any anxiety or concern or even just unbalance. And for our team, we picked up really quickly on the dogs that came in just real aroused. They were just, they woke up that way. I have a standard poodle who literally hits the ground running every single morning. And for those dogs, often we would do a little bit of what we call private play. So we would take them outside, we would play with them privately, burn off what I call the top energy. So that when the dog goes into play, they are calmer, they are not anxious, they're able to really engage in a way that is pleasing to the other dogs, which is key, and also pleasing to the handlers. Nice loose body language, not a lot of running around, barking, jumping up in the air, that kind of stuff. So some dogs we just burned what we call the top off. But we always ran in the same routine. And I was a big believer in breaks, big believer in downtime. I think dogs that don't get breaks can get over aroused. And we all know that doesn't usually lead to anything good. So yeah, big believer in the nap time.
I think back to just creating that structure and having that break to humanize it. You would not want your child to be playing, human child, to be playing, going, crazy all day long without giving them some sort of break. It's like filling them up with sugar and just letting them, run amok.
Yeah.
That's why, I think even babies thrive on routine when they're first born, and getting them into a feeding and a sleeping. And, it's very similar. I've said over and over again, there's so many ways we humanize dogs incorrectly. Yes. And the ways that we should humanize them, we don't always think of first. So, that's one where I think that if there's just giving them that structure, because they obviously don't play crazy all day at home. They have times when they're up and they're moving about, and then they sleep quite a bit. Even some younger dogs will take that,
quite a bit. Some research says they sleep up to 17 hours a day. And just like little kids, if you don't give them a nap, we all know what happens. I mean, they come apart.
Right. Exactly. So true.
Dogs will do that too if they are overstimulated.
So in your opinion, if somebody was going to look at how to do like nap times within a daycare environment, how would you create a rotation if you didn't have enough enclosures to do a nap time?
So there are a couple of ways to do it. We were fortunate enough that we did have enough enclosures. So there's two different things here. So how do I rotate my dogs? We always had multiple entrances and exits from the yard. So, and then we had a lot of gates. And we had fencing in the building that was pretty tall. You couldn't see over it unless you were up on top of something like on a step ladder, so that we could move dogs out of one yard into another, what we would just say is a holding area, while some dogs came into that play space. Okay. And a handler would be able to move the other dogs into their dens. And what was interesting was over time, dogs that were regular, and we had a membership based business. So our dogs were regular comers, and they would go straight into their den. They knew where they were going, right? They would boop, 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 right into those dens. Now, sometimes you don't have that space, and you can certainly create a quieter space. Even if you're not going to leave the play space that you're in, you can put all your equipment away. You can turn the lights down. You can turn on some soothing music. The handler in the yard can sit down and start engaging in calmer behaviors, a lot of touching, some, light massaging. But if you create that environment, the dogs will pick it up. And the big one for us was turning the lights down. The second the lights went down and the play equipment went away, or the enrichment equipment went away, they knew. We would also put in corunda beds. Yeah. So we had lots of corunda beds, and we would put little mats out on them, and the dogs knew and they wanted the break. Most of them really needed the break. So,
that makes me think, when you were talking about you had regular attending dogs, if people are not requiring reservations, that's another step that you can take to just help create that routine. Because you can even explain to pet parents, it's better for the dog. It's not just better for us and our profit margin, but it's better for the dog if they have a standing reservation. And maybe that is only one day a week, but it's consistently for them. We wake up on Tuesdays and we go to daycare, and that's their daycare day, and they will learn that pretty quickly. So just other little things that you can do that really will help what's in the best interest of the dog.
A reservation is a great idea. It's a really, really good way to do it. I mean, I tell people, your dog doesn't have a job. All they do is watch you. And they know, if I put on these tennis shoes, that means we're going to the park. Well, they know when Tuesday rolls around and you pick up that leash, right? So yeah, I'm a huge fan of reservations from a dog health perspective as well as an employee health perspective, because you can properly staff if you know who's coming. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the other thing I was going to say, we were talking about environment, is that great book to read if people haven't read it is Through a Dog's Ear by
Yeah.
Joshua Leeds and Lisa Wagner, I think is her last name.
Yes.
He's an acoustical engineer. She's a veterinarian. And together they did all this research on what was the best music that different animals would thrive to. And in discovering all of that, they found that classical music is something that dogs really respond well to, and it keeps them at their resting heart rate. So they have developed a bunch of playlists of music that you can play in the background, and that actually will help keep dogs on a more even keel, because the woman who recorded it literally recorded classical music that you would recognize, but in some cases it's a little faster or a little slower because she recorded it directly to the resting heart rate of dogs, which to me was like, I geeked out in the fascination of that.
Yeah,
you know?
it's very effective. We used to have employees who would say to us, "Hey, can we turn something else on? Because I'm literally getting like,
Yeah.
a little out of it myself in the art." So we'd put on, some regular classical music. Yeah, that's a huge, and again, it becomes a cue. When you create these routines, the dogs hear the music, they know what's happening.
Exactly. Yep. They actually came up with one that's like riding with dogs in the car, and it's recorded so that dogs don't get anxious
Yeah.
or car sick, but it's also not to a tempo that would cause a driver to fall asleep. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a whole lot of research to put into
That's a
something.
whole lot of fantastic research, right? That must have been fascinating to be a piece of.
I mean, the other thing too that you can work on is just controlling the noise that's in your environment. So, do you have equipment? Maybe dogs are sensitive to a vacuum or the sound of something like that. So, being aware that, when you have dogs in the play space, that you want to make sure that all of the noises in the environment are at kind of a controllable level and not something that may be overstimulating for the dogs,
Yeah.
especially those that come in and, like you said, your poodle gets out of bed and it's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
From the very first moment. So tell us what are a few signs of overstimulation in dogs that you see at daycare?
Generally it's dogs who can't settle down. That's the first one. They just cannot settle down. Maybe they're panting a lot, pacing a lot. They have rougher play. They will play in a style, they almost throw themselves into you or into other dogs. And they don't seem to be aware of the cues of other dogs, which is when real trouble starts, right? So other dogs are playing or, having a nice play group together, or they're just kind of chilling together. And then you'll have this dog that comes out of left field, right? That just comes in and jumps in the middle of everything.
Socially awkward.
Socially awkward dogs. And that can, escalate. And unfortunately, it escalates really quickly if you're not really aware of what you're seeing. And that's really the biggest one we see is dogs who won't settle down and who bang into other dogs and aren't reading social cues. And then you'll get dogs who start barking, the happy barker, right? And for some dogs, that's very stimulating. So when you have another dog running around barking, it also gets other dogs really stimulating. And then there can be things that are really more anxiety. So you'll see them panting a lot. Their eyes are real big, or they keep shaking it off like they're wet. Picking up their paws, those kinds of things. A dog that is overstimulated. And obviously the vocalizing. Besides barking, you can start hearing dogs that are growling, and the growling can get a little bit louder. Those are dogs that are definitely overstimulated in that environment.
What I'm hearing is that the key is really to train your staff to understand body language.
Oh,
so that
100%.
Throw that plug in there. Yeah, because we have a program 100%. For that. But yeah, I really do think that's the number one key is that that your staff really understand what those cues are as far as the anxiety level in dogs, what dogs may show as far as shyness versus dogs that are overconfident, and how they can react really quickly to stimulation. So all of that is really key in making sure that that's part of your onboarding and training program with your staff.
There are so many steps that happen before you have a real problem, right?
Yeah.
And so teaching your staff to see that before it becomes an issue. And often getting that, it can be one dog. It can just be one dog that's really like ramped up for whatever reason. And getting that dog out of that play area can really just calm everybody down. So
We used to talk about that a lot with our staff. When you can identify the one dog that's the most disruptive, and it's not that they're a bad dog. It
no,
may
they're just
literally just be that
disruptive.
they can't handle the stimulation level of that play group. So, you know, what does that dog look like if you put them in it's kind of counterintuitive. You think, oh, this dog's really active. They need to be in this high
Yeah,
energy play group. But
yeah,
when you remove them and put them in more of like a middle energy group, that they actually thrive because they don't feel like they have to keep up with that energy that was causing them to be overstimulated.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
one of the things I think is a good time for people to pay attention. For us, it was pickup time. So right around 5 to 6:30, right, is when everyone would come and get their dogs. And that was when we had dogs and we had a list of them. And we would say, okay, we need all these dogs. We're going to put them up for naps right now because they would get so overstimulated at the excitement, right? So changes in environment, transitions can be a real sticky
It's
area.
fun. It's funny. I have to tell a story on this one. So we had a client who came every single day, wonderful dog, and yet we closed at 7 p.m. and the pet parent would always pick up right about 6:59. So that just became the nickname. And that dog became so patient and tolerant because she kind of accepted that dad was going to be the very last one to pick up. But at the same time, you see those dogs at the minute the very first dog leaves, it's like, oh my God, where's my mom? Where's my mom? You
Yeah,
know? And
yeah,
so they get really anxious. And that
it
is a
really,
great time. Just that they don't have to be in the group until the very end of the night or
yeah,
the end of your work day, you know, giving them a space where they can kind of settle, maybe giving them a licky mat or something
yeah,
that can keep them a little preoccupied is a great way to help because there's nothing worse than trying to get a dog out of your play yard or your playroom and having a bunch of other dogs trying to come out at the same time. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
like a spark waiting to happen. So
yeah, it is. But as far that's a good spot to put that you really need a holding an entrance space, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, so the other thing I was thinking about, just listening to you talk about staff training and some of the understanding of those cues, and I know as a trainer you will understand this, but I found oftentimes when I was training a new employee that there's just a lack of confidence, and part of that just comes with the more time you spend observing dogs and being with dogs. But in the beginning, telling them that consistency is key, and then also just being very aware of what you may inadvertently do to overstimulate a dog, because I think that can happen as well, that we inadvertently do things like, we're petting a dog, we're doing
Yeah,
really fast little fingers, and that's really more stimulating than just like doing a
yeah,
nice slow stroke on the dog. So anything that we can do there. And then I think also when you're dealing with a new employee who may not have a lot of confidence in their leadership skills yet, making sure they understand that it's okay to interrupt their play, interrupt it at a low level and keep interrupting it if you have to, but that's better than letting things get a little edgier. And when you're kind of at that spark that
yeah.
something else could happen. So yeah, do you have any recommendations on kind of helping staff get leadership confidence?
I think it's so important to shadow.
Mm, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Your onboarding has got to include. We had 2 full weeks of shadow before anyone was ever allowed to be alone. And if they were alone with dogs, it was then a very small group of dogs. And the person they shadowed with was somebody who had been doing this a long time, because that person is able to say, okay, do you see that happening? Do you see that happening? And the person being trained is able to watch the on staff person. What do they do? How do they handle that situation? Shadowing is huge. And obviously, learning dog body language, the software that TDG has is fantastic to do that. People don't, a lot of us who are naturally able to see it don't understand that other people are simply not able to see it. And you have to train them, and training them using out of playgroup equipment, right? So using the software that the Guru College provides, then introducing them into a playgroup. I have been around dog daycare and doing this for 25 years. And before this existed, the only way you could train people was to put them in a big playgroup or a playgroup of any size. And that's a really difficult place to learn. So you're learning to put a fire out while the house is on fire, right? It's very stimulating to humans. There's a lot happening. So doing the dog guru colleges and then doing the shadowing is huge. And it also allows the person that is being trained to say, hey, what do I do in this scenario? how do I diffuse this situation? And it allows the employer and the trainer to see what are they comfortable with. A lot of people who don't have confidence are not comfortable with larger dogs in the beginning, and that's okay. You have to know their limitations, right? And then every day that they work for you and they have a successful time and you reinforce that with them, they will get more and more confident, you know? Yeah, I'm a huge believer in the shadowing and the training before you go in before you ever go into play groups, there should be training, lots of it.
So we have a question from Chris. It says, do you have any suggestions for dogs that do not want to rest at nap time? We have a young dog that doesn't nap when the lights go down.
I don't know, Chris, if you have a space like a kennel or a crate or a den. We would give, Carrie mentioned a licky mat, but we kept Kongs in the freezer. And we would give out frozen Kongs to these dogs to help them calm down. You always want to ask the owners, hey, is your dog okay with peanut butter? Or is your dog okay with fill in the blank? Just to make sure you don't end up with an allergy situation. We found things like that worked with dogs who just did not want to nap. But having a quieter space, turning on the music that we talked about earlier, making sure there's a softer area or even just an elevated bed, and then giving them something to do. While he may not go to sleep, he'll at least channel his energy and he'll slow his body down. And a lot of times, if they can slow their body down, their mind will slow down, right? Where the body goes, the mind will follow, hopefully.
Yeah. So perfect example. I'm thinking of human analogies as you're talking about this, and think about it when you see really, really good first responders, if they are at the scene of an accident and there is somebody who's in shock or they're, severe trauma, what
Yeah.
is the first thing they do? They ask them, what's your name? What day is today? They're trying to get you out of your own head and get you to the space where you can focus. And I think that's what dogs go through, is that they're just kind of in there and they don't really know how to get out of their head and calm themselves down. So giving them something to do, like you said,
That's
with
a really good point. And when you said that, I thought I've been in facilities when I've helped other people, coached other people. They will have nap space, but the nap space is in a stimulating area.
Yeah.
So there's dogs going by, or maybe it's in the grooming area. So it needs to be a quieter space, right? And visual is usually a big piece of that.
Yeah, you have to look at, there's auditory stimuli, there's scent stimuli, there's sound stimuli, light, all of that is just something that they're definitely going to react to. So, okay, so we got another question from Jessica. She said, oh, FYI, we use iCalm Dog and it's awesome, but some employees play it at high volumes and we have to remind them that might be stressing out the dogs. So that's great. That's a really good tip.
I think employees always think if you play it louder, it works more. I always think that's right. And I have to remind them, I'm like, the dog can hear a whole lot better than we can, right?
That's so funny. Okay, let's see. Somebody else is just chatting back and forth. So let's see here. Oh, so this was just a conversation in the chat, basically, about whether this had been a webinar on breed specifics in day camp. And they're answering back and forth to that. But yes, there can be some specific breeds that tend to be more overstimulated. And those are the ones where I used to kind of count. I would watch a dog come in as a puppy, even, some bully breeds, because we both have French bulldogs or have had French bulldogs, Amber. So we know that Frenchies are not always everybody's favorite in daycare or any kind of bully breed. But oftentimes we would see they come in as a puppy. They're great. They're super playful. And then suddenly, oops, I've lost Amber. Suddenly, there's a point, whether it's maturation, that they hit somewhere between like 10 to 14 months of age, or maybe it's just the number of dogs, but they kind of hit their threshold and they're no longer great in that daycare group because of the number of dogs they're around. So, so when you can see that there's certain breeds, but I also think about doodles sometimes. I think that doodle can be very jumpy and barky and sometimes overreactive due to the stimulation level. So it's really kind of key just to make sure that your environment is, really well taken care of, that you're listening for different sounds and lights and stimulation. And I need to pop you back in. There you are. Okay, perfect. So yeah, there are some breeds, but I can't say that you can label the breed specifically. Oops, lost you again, Amber. because I think every dog is individual. So it's just going to be based on the evaluation process that you do and how you assess the dog for the play group and making sure that you're doing a good assignment to the play groups that you have. And if you have limited play groups, maybe you only have two groups, one for large dogs and one for small dogs, then maybe you really need to take a look at offering some individual services, or maybe coming up with a different solution for that dog, that is, including training or small dog group walking, something else that's not putting them in that environment that's going to continually have them being highly aroused. So, all right. I think that. You have any other questions? I think that was it for our questions. So, let's see what else I had on there. Communicating all of this to pet parents. So, what is your recommendation? Whether you, can you hear me, Amber? Nope. Let's see.
It's not working.
Can you hear me? No. We can see you. We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, no. So Chris had one more question. I'll just put that up while we're dealing with some tech issues. Another one, we have a dog that doesn't respond to recall and has no interest in treats. So she tends to overstimulate herself. Any good directions on this? So yes, my suggestion when you have dogs that don't have a great recall is to practice it, for one, and work with the pet parent, really talk to them about practicing recall. And it can be very short distances. It's just a matter of getting them to come when called. And then the other side of it is, if they are not treat motivated, find out what their motivator is. Is it praise? Is it a specific toy? I had lots of dogs in my adult life and always was able to train using some sort of food or treat as the motivator. And then I got a Catahoula and she didn't want anything to do with food. And what we found was that my daughter was doing some hand-eye coordination with tennis balls because she was a ice hockey goaltender. And one day our dog just came flying by, grabbed that tennis ball and was just off. And we discovered she loved tennis balls. And after that, we could train her to do anything if the motivator was the tennis ball, that she got the tennis ball as the reward. So sometimes it may just be figuring that out. Definitely have a good conversation with the pet parents, because sometimes they are the ones who know more about what motivates the dog. And that may be another big help. Going into that whole topic, we used to do daily report cards at our facility, and that listed some things that we may see as a new observation in behavior. But if we started to see anything become a recurring inappropriate behavior with dogs, we would definitely have a conversation with the pet parent to let them know, because sometimes the dogs really won't be able to self-regulate and the size of the play group is just too much. And that overstimulation factor is going to be there no matter when they visit the daycare. So that's also a good way to do it, is just to make sure that you have really clear communication with the pet parent. And sometimes that path for the dog may not be group play. You may have to either excuse them from your facility, or you may have to come up with a different service for that dog. But that's a great time to think about adding a new service line, because that will generate new revenue, and you can come up with all kinds of creative ideas. So let's see here.
Can you hear me, Carrie?
I can. Can you hear us?
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I got on my phone. Like I don't know why my phone is working, but my computer isn't. But yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Hey, so the question we were just talking about is that they have a dog that doesn't respond to recall and has no interest in treats. So she tends to overstimulate herself. And I was saying that sometimes you just have to find out what that dog's motivator is.
Yeah.
So what suggestions do you have on that?
Does she play well with other dogs? Is she getting overstimulated with the other dogs?
Okay, let's see if Chris jumps back in with an answer to that. So let's say she does. She's overstimulated, but she is a good player.
So I would come back to the initial discussion we were talking about, getting that extra energy off, taking that dog away from the group of dogs. And like you said, understanding what motivates that dog. So some dogs are motivated by food. Some dogs are not. Some dogs like attention. Some dogs like to be touched. Some dogs like to play with toys. Some dogs like to chase things. So if you play with the dog outside of a play space, the dog is going to tell you really quickly what motivates them and what they enjoy. You may have to play with that. I heard you mentioning created an extra service, this is a great time to do that. Um, Particularly if it's a problem for you with the group play or the group of dogs they're playing with, is letting mom and dad know, listen, we need to play with Fluffy outside first. We're going to do an extra, just, well, we used to call it an out alone. So they would go out and play fetch or play tug or whatever it was that this dog loved, to get them motivated before they went in to play with other dogs. And then reminding the person in the play group who is minding the dogs, hey, Fluffy likes for you to say good dog, and pet her. Doesn't really care about food, which you wouldn't have in there anyway. But there are always other things. Some dogs like squeaky toys. Some dogs, again, they like attention, or they like movement. They like to sniff things a lot. So doing even treats that are in a hidey little thing, not just giving them to them. The other thing you can do is ask mom or dad to not feed the dog before they come to daycare, and ask them to bring their food, because a dog that hasn't had breakfast is a lot more motivated, and you can often use their food as a game with them, right? To redirect them. Put it in a Kong. I like puzzles. I'm a big fan of puzzles. You have to know the dog well, and they have to be in a space where someone can check on them. You always want someone to check on a dog who's eating anything, playing with anything.
I am. I know I've shared this before, but we had a Frenchie who came 1 day a week in the afternoon, and he would arrive just
Oh my
crazy,
gosh, I remember this.
frantic energy. And, it was like everybody in the room, the play group was just like on the downward spiral of their energy because they'd been there since early morning, and then in comes this dog, and he was just like, took the whole room off the rails, right? But that's when we really got into doing more scent investigation work. And so I just
Yes.
had a tray that had spice jars in it, and I would
Yep.
just let him smell all those spice jars and give him like a minute or two of that. And
Yep.
his little brain was like firing on all thrusters. And all of a sudden he'd come in and have a really good shake off, and he'd be like, hey guys. It was almost like, giving him a little
Yeah, I mean, we used to
calm
do
your brain
nose
down.
work. Well, they were scent games, because nose work is actually a sport, but scent
Yeah.
games, let's just say, same thing. We had a little scent exit area, so the dogs could leave and they could smell lavender on their way out. They could smell peppermint on their way out. Scent is one of the most powerful motivators to a dog, impacts their brain the most. So yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Anything like that. Yeah.
Think about when you take them on a walk, right? People
Yes.
always like trying to pull them, stop
I know.
sniffing and blah, blah, blah. But that's so true. I am a big fan of taking a dog on a scent walk. So it has nothing to
Yes.
do with you getting exercise. It's about just letting the dog go and sniff whatever they want. And first time you do it, you may not even get out of your driveway because, they may find so many smells just in your front yard and your
And that's
driveway that,
okay.
yeah, it's
I used to
great for
have,
them.
when I did a lot of nose work and trained a lot of nose work, I had clients all the time who were blown away. Their dog would, do 4 or 5 searches in an hour or two, and they would be exhausted. And those searches are maybe 5 minutes, maybe
Oh, yeah.
10. If we're, people really underestimate just how valuable simple things like that can be.
Well, and that is, just a segue in, that's a great thing to start adding enrichment activities into your
Yes.
regular daycare, because the more you can do that, the more you're engaging their mind and tiring them out mentally, the less they need physical exercise. Because you think at it from the perspective of, you've got these dogs that are playing in kind of traditional play groups for 8 or 9 hours a day, you're conditioning them to be
You're
very good
building
athletes that
super
will then.
athletes.
Yep, and they will
Yes.
need that level of activity all the time. Whereas if you
Yes.
give them breaks and you really challenge them mentally with, whether it's food related or, tactile surfaces or scent investigation, anything like that, will get their brain so much more focused and tired that they actually, I think, have a better day and the behavior changes drastically.
And
So,
Carrie, I know you saw this because we saw this. We would have a dog that when they first came, mom and dad were like, oh, it's so fantastic. He's so well exercised. He goes home and he's relaxed. And about shortly, 3 to 6 months, they would say he's just as wired when I, bring him home. They adapt really, really fast.
it's crazy.
And enrichment can really help with that. And it can also keep a dog as a client longer, because as our dogs would age, they didn't really want to play like that.
No, yeah.
You know,
But they
they wanted
still,
they wanted enrichment and engagement and mental stimulation, but they didn't want to run around like lunatics.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love to see that progression because we had three
Yeah.
big dogs and three little dog groups, and it was kind of like that young, really high energy, and then like the more
Yes.
middle energy, and then the more senior dogs or super shy dogs would start in those groups.
Yes. Yeah.
But watching them get to that progression where they still loved their friends, they loved to be among their friends. They would maybe play, you know, a couple of play bouts, depending on how old they were and how active they remained. But as we also watched when we added the enrichment, it was amazing how some of those dogs aged better because
Yes.
they were, you know, doing different, you know, fit pause activities, and they were more aware of their hind end, and we were able to keep them aging in better condition. So I just wanted to put this up because Jessica asked what a list of scents that you found are interesting to dogs. So in my
I have
tray,
a big list. Go ahead,
yeah,
Gary.
I know. In my little scent tray, I had a lot of spices, and then I also had. I went on Amazon. I bought these cheap little plastic, like cosmetic jars that had screw-on lids,
Yeah.
and I put like a cotton round that had Dawn dish soap or rubbing alcohol or lemon juice, soy sauce, all these different things that were smells that they would have in their own home. And then we would do, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of some of the others. Peppermint, you know, some of the essential
Yeah.
oils, lavender,
Lavender, peppermint.
lemongrass, you know, things
Yep.
like that. Were really, and lavender, of course, has a very calming effect. It does on humans as well. Um, the other thing too is that if you see a dog that's super stressed and has overdilated eyes, rosemary is a vasodilator, so that will actually help. It helps people who suffer from migraines. So that's a smell that helps to kind of increase the dilation in the veins so that they actually, the blood starts flowing normally again and they don't have that kind of tight
Yeah.
condensed artery. So that's another good one. But on the spice side, we did everything. I mean, we had all these different things, but I would say dogs loved garlic. Cumin was another one, or cumin, I should say. And I started to wonder if it was because the pet parents cooked with those smells a lot, and so the dogs were used to it, but they would really get into those. Basil, oregano, some we had like strong curry powder or chili pepper. So yeah, I mean, really, I think you can expose them to everything. And I would stay away from, you know, if you had some form of like grasses or, you know, more environmental things, because some dogs do have allergies to that. But yeah, I think you're only limited by your own
You
imagination
are
when it
only
comes to
limited
cream.
by your
Yeah,
imagination. You want to do the research. There are some essential oils that are toxic to dogs. There are some, obviously, we all know there are foods and herbs and stuff that dogs should not be exposed to. So you want to make sure you do your research. The other part of that is if you have a dog who comes to you that does nose work, you don't want to use those scents
right. Yeah.
because those scents are paired to a different action. But yeah, we did all kinds of things. We had like fresh herbs, trying to think what was there, lavender, and there was some peppermint there, and there was sage there. So different little herbs, and we would have them in little different pots. This was exiting.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that
So
idea.
you can do things like that. We would put just random things out there sometimes, things that we had just found. There was a big circular, I don't know, it was big circular cardboard tube. I don't even know where it came from. That dog thought that was the greatest thing they'd ever, and they would smell it and, all kinds of things like that. You can do just about anything as long as it is safe for them, because what's happening is they're processing that. They're using their brain in a completely different way. Lemons were always a huge hit for us. Dogs that had not been exposed to it were really like fascinated by it. Just a sliced lemon, or they make lemon essential oil too. Yeah,
I love the idea of having that kind of as they exit, because if it's
yeah,
something that's kind of in your lobby area or by the exit, then the pet parent gets to see that. And then that's when you can really talk up and kind of upsell, oh, this is an enrichment activity that we're doing. And if you'd like to sign your dog up to do some scent and, investigation work or something, it's a great way to kind of cross sell that. So,
and
all
that
right.
lavender on the way will also help them. Like, they get excited, mom's there, and on the way out, they brush into that lavender and they get that nice hint of lavender, and it also helps them. Okay, chill.
Wow, this like half hour zoomed by. We've actually gone
Oh
over.
yeah.
So I love that. If there are no other questions, then I will just make sure that I share that once again, when we were talking about staff training, we've got two programs, Knowing Dogs as well as Pet Guru College. They are online based training programs, and they are also accredited through AP or CPDT and PAC and RACE. So if you've got staff who have a certification and need CEUs, they can get that by going through the training. And finally, let me put this up here because we do have a Grow Your Pet Care Business Facebook group, and we would love for you to join. It's a great environment to just kind of ask the audience questions and get feedback on things. I just love to watch the chats that are going on there because I think people are really generous about sharing ideas and, you know, tips and tricks that they've learned over the years. If you're new to the industry, it's a great place to just get connected with other pet care business owners. So there's the link to join. And we have two stipulations, and one is be nice. We don't want any negativity on there. And two is to not try and sell things. So we are definitely keeping this an information area and not a sales page. So if you can handle those two requirements, we would love for you to join. So, and Amber, I want to thank you for joining me this week. This is awesome. And
I can't hear you, but I can see you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry.
All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.